Petals fall around the smiling, blue-haired woman as she enjoys the peaceful garden moment.
A black-haired man and the woman in an elegant purple gown walk together.
Couples in formal attire stroll along a grand, red-carpeted hall during a prestigious gala.
A blonde-haired couple stares in utter disbelief at the woman in the purple gown.
Arnold is shocked to see her alive, while the blonde woman declares she won't give up the prince. Fienne coldly claims she doesn't know any former great saint. The blue-haired woman identifies herself as Black Rose, come from the underworld to congratulate them. A vision of the woman's past life as a saint in Rod appears as a memory. Voices call out a morning greeting and prepare for the day's religious temple prayers. Narrative text explains that Fienne has lived in the temple since the day she was born. A bell rings twice over the grand temple building during a clear and bright morning. The high priestess and temple maidens stand together, holding a newborn baby in their arms. The high priestess declares that the baby will be the last child raised in the room. A close-up highlights the cold, focused, and piercing blue eyes of the high priestess. The priestess tells the honored parents that their child has incredible holy power and will be raised as a saint. A baby's cry sounds as the high priestess holds the infant saint tightly in her arms. Growing up in the temple, the blue-haired child confirms her holy power to a curious young friend. A temple maiden informs the young woman that the high priestess is calling for her arrival. The priestess commanded that as the great saint, Fienne must devote her entire life to the kingdom of Rod. Fienne reflects on serving God while treating the priestess as her mother and maidens as sisters. A voice announces that Lady Fienne must perform her scheduled service work in the temple. A cheerful brown-haired girl named Momo is introduced among a field of vibrant yellow flowers. The two women look forward to the townspeople visiting and sharing delicious sweets later that day. A maiden named Lala runs toward the great saint with an urgent and unexpected message. Lala reports the shocking news that Crown Prince Arnold is unexpectedly returning from the battlefield. News of the army's retreat and fierce border resistance leaves Fienne looking deeply troubled and concerned. Fienne reflects on her forced engagement to the prideful and arrogant Crown Prince Arnold. An agreement between the temple and royal family forced them together, leaving Fienne with no choice. Fienne suspends charity work to prepare for medical relief, worrying that the prince is badly injured. Fienne requests that public entry into the temple be restricted during the coming medical crisis. A maiden warns Fienne to prepare for the worst regarding the condition of the arriving wounded. Momo wonders how long the war will drag on while Fienne remains quietly somber. The brown-haired girl looks on with an expression of deep concern and worry for the future. A gentle and beautiful expression returns to Fienne's face during a quiet, private moment. A soft pat sounds as a hand is placed reassuringly on top of Momo's head. Fienne comforts her friend, assuring her that God is watching over all of them properly. Patter sounds as a man runs into the temple desperately begging for the saint's help. He pleads for his young son, who was badly injured after being run over by a carriage. Soft murmurs sound as the temple maidens react with shock to the child's bloody head injury. A squeeze sounds as Fienne clenches her fist, refusing to turn away the suffering child despite orders. A look of firm determination fills Fienne's eyes as she decides to help the boy. The blue-haired woman steps forward to assist despite the official suspension of the temple services. The maidens warn her that the high priestess will be angry at her open disobedience. A low hum sounds as Fienne focuses her divine energy to begin the healing process. Brilliant light emanates from her hands, closing the boy's painful and bloody wounds instantly. The young boy blinks in surprise as his pain and injuries completely vanish under her power. Narrative text confirms Fienne's miraculous power of healing while the stunned parents look on. The townspeople marvel at the miracle they just witnessed, performed by the great saint. The parents thank her profusely, vowing never to forget her incredible kindness and debt of gratitude. Visible exhaustion begins to show on Fienne's face after spending her precious divine energy. Fienne admits she overdid it, feeling the heavy physical toll of her spent holy power. Two figures stand together. The left one warns to keep secrets, while the other seeks rest. A gentle voice encourages the resting blue-haired woman to sleep well. The blue-haired woman worries Arnold will find out and punish others, questioning the morality of the war. Narration notes the kingdom of Rod was once modest and self-sufficient as the woman rests. An antique map illustrates the geographic reach of the kingdom of Rod. A crown is lowered onto a blonde head as history recounts the first king's rise. A blonde man prays before being crowned, later shouting orders to expand the kingdom and destroy demons. Peasants question the king's definition of demons as holy war begins and soldiers charge into battle. Narration explains that saints provided the hidden support behind the Kingdom of Rod's many military victories. The blue-haired saint appears physically drained from using her healing powers to support the war effort. Amidst cries to destroy demon blood, the exhausted saint tends to wounded men on the floor. Relying on the saint's constant healing, the Kingdom of Rod continues its relentless cycle of violent invasions.
Sitting arrogantly on his throne, the blonde Prince Arnold declares his intent to conquer the Elven Kingdom. A faceless blonde deity stands amidst lilies, representing the divine will of Gatrucia Hay Brallo. A celebratory trumpet blares under the bright sun as the blue-haired saint suddenly snaps awake. A brown-haired attendant announces Arnold's arrival as the saint notices his approaching shadow and gasps. Arnold winces in pain, clutching his blood-soaked bandages while the saint watches him from afar. Lord Arnold grimaces with intense discomfort, his face contorted as he struggles with his physical injuries. The saint observes that Arnold's wounds are unusually severe, resenting his total lack of consideration for her. The saint notes Arnold's heavy injuries, but he rudely demands she stop talking and heal him immediately. A soft hum sounds as the saint begins healing Arnold's chest in the quiet infirmary. The saint's eyes widen as she realizes the energy from this healing session feels fundamentally wrong. Fearing the drain on her power, the saint discovers dark, thorny vines constricting Arnold's literal heart. Brilliantly blinding light erupts from the saint's hands as she struggles against the dark curse she discovered. A heavy thud echoes as the saint collapses to the floor, leaving Arnold sitting alone. Arnold mockingly questions the saint's inability to break an elven curse as she stares up in terror. A sudden retch sounds as the saint coughs up blood, splattering her hands and the floor. The room falls silent as the saint lies broken on the floor before the wounded prince. Morning light filters through the window as the soft chirp of birds marks a new day. The saint wakes up in bed, looking dazed and questioning where she is. A brown-haired attendant approaches the saint's bedside to check on her well-being. The blue-haired woman winces in her bed, weakly crying out that she is in pain. Sturdy brown shoes click rhythmically against the floor as someone approaches the saint's room. An elderly high priestess with short gray hair stands regally amidst a field of white lilies. The saint reaches out to the high priestess, worriedly explaining Arnold's curse and her own physical state. The high priestess confirms she requested Arnold stop overexerting himself, earning a grateful response from the saint. The high priestess explains Arnold was cursed for attacking an elf, shocking the saint with the news. The high priestess warns of elven retaliation and generational curses but dismisses it all as divine will. The saint gazes at the high priestess, questioning why their god would mandate such a continuous war. Narration explains that while territory expands and nobles profit, the human cost of the war grows. The text laments that common citizens are falling into severe poverty as the conflict drags on. A distraught family weeps as the narration highlights the failure to protect innocent people during the war. Lying in her bed, the blue-haired saint asks if demons truly exist in their world. The high priestess looks down solemnly, confirming with absolute certainty that demons do indeed exist. The saint notes Arnold never mentions demons despite his battle stories, but she remains too afraid to probe. Surrounded by flowers and fellow saints, the blue-haired woman expresses her desire to return to the temple. A fellow saint suggests that the blue-haired woman should continue resting in her room. The saint insists on leaving her bed, claiming she cannot neglect her religious duties any longer. Sunlight streams into the grand temple as the saint approaches a figure seated at the altar. Saint Jessica, a blonde woman adorned with green emeralds, offers a serene and knowing smile. Fienne observes Jessica sitting in the seat reserved for the great saint. Jessica informs Fienne she has been chosen to take her place at the temple. With a smirk, Jessica reveals that Prince Arnold has officially broken off his engagement. Jessica arrogantly announces that the prince intends to take her as his new wife. Fienne reels from the news as the high priestess interrupts Jessica's boasting. The high priestess expresses the kingdom's concern regarding Fienne's rapidly deteriorating physical health. It is officially announced that Jessica will be the one to become the crown princess. Jessica cruelly mocks Fienne, stating that Arnold has no use for a broken saint. Fienne feels betrayed as she realizes she is being discarded after exhausting her holy powers. Fienne experiences a sudden, haunting memory from her past with the prince. She remembers Arnold once cruelly wishing she was as beautiful as the blonde Jessica. Realizing Arnold and Jessica have long shared a secret affection, Fienne questions her own purpose. The high priestess suggests that Fienne move to the stargazing tower to rest. The elderly woman promises a beautiful view and a dedicated attendant at the remote tower. Fienne is horrified, knowing the tower is a damp, moldy place unsuitable for recovery. Jessica mentions the tower room is being renovated and hints at further duties for Fienne. Looking villainous, Jessica tells Fienne her new task is to watch over the kingdom from confinement. The Chancellor demands silence as Fienne stands between her former allies in the Grand Hall. Jessica walks away, leaving Fienne alone with the High Priestess in the silent cathedral. The High Priestess questions if Fienne is unhappy with the decision to move her. The Elder insists that the isolation is solely for Fienne's own peaceful recuperation. The High Priestess delivers the crushing news that Fienne has only 1 year left to live. A wave of absolute despair washes over Fienne as she processes her terminal diagnosis. The elder repeats the tragic news, confirming that Fien's body is failing her completely. A heavy thud echoes through the church as Fien collapses to her knees in grief. The high priestess somberly notes that the doctors have exhausted all possible medical treatments. The situation becomes desperate, leaving faith as the only remaining hope for the dying saint. Fienna remembers the terrifying moment she recently coughed up a dark spray of blood. Suffering from a complete loss of appetite, Fien realizes her health is never going to improve. She internally screams, wondering if she is simply meant to wait for death in solitude. The high priestess takes Fien's hands, urging her to believe that a miracle is possible. The two women kneel together on the floor, seeking divine intervention for the broken saint. The high priestess offers gentle comfort, assuring Fienne that her desperate prayers will be heard. Fien looks up with watery eyes, clinging to the high priestess as her only support. A heartbreaking wail breaks the silence as Fien sobs uncontrollably in the elder's embrace. Lying in her sickbed, Fien officially signs the documents to dissolve her royal engagement. Fienna reflects on how easily her life changed with just a single stroke of a pen.
The Chancellor makes weak excuses for Arnold's absence, claiming the prince is too emotional to visit.
The Chancellor informs Fien that she will still be provided with a personal attendant. He highlights the panoramic view from the tower, trying to mask the reality of her exile. The High Priestess asks Fien if this arrangement makes her feel more comfortable about her future. Fien remains silent, knowing she is being sentenced to spend her final days in a prison. Her former mentors continue their hollow platitudes about her watching over the kingdom from above. A sense of deep betrayal lingers as Fie hands back the signed legal papers. The High Priestess promises that Fienne's name will be remembered as a hero of the country. The elderly woman exits the room, leaving the dying saint to her grim thoughts. Fien watches them leave, suspecting the High Priestess and Chancellor are hiding something sinister. Bright flowers and luxury gifts clutter the room, contrasting with the somber atmosphere of death. A concerned saint asks Fien about her terminal illness and the curse affecting her heart. The surrounding saints look on with pity as Fienne accepts her fate with quiet resignation. Fien looks completely devastated as the reality of her situation sets in. She grips the official document tightly, her fingers trembling with emotion. Fien struggles to hide her deep sorrow while attempting to maintain a calm facade. Fien asks if her attendants will accompany her during her exile to the tower. The attendants look away, their faces filled with guilt and unspoken sadness. They regretfully explain that they have only just been informed of the new arrangements. One attendant begins to confess a troubling truth regarding the move. Fien is shocked to learn that the Chancellor has already appointed a new attendant. A guard and two new maids arrive to take over the saint's personal care. Fien's heart sinks as she realizes she is being separated from her loyal friends. Her companion warns that the temple and royal family intend to imprison her. Fien learns she has been falsely credited with the Oracle to invade Lilia. Her image is being manipulated to justify the kingdom's aggressive military expansion. As the war turns into a loss, the public's resentment is building against Fienne. Fien protests that she never received an oracle, as only the priestess can. Her attendant points out that the common citizens are unaware of that distinction. Fien feels the weight of the temple's betrayal as her friends express confusion. She remembers the High Priestess's promise that her name would be remembered as a hero. Fien realizes that the heroic title was just a way to shift the blame. A sudden, chaotic commotion erupts as a loud, aggressive chatter sounds from outside. Fien looks toward the windows, wondering what is happening in the courtyard below. A sudden wave of fear washes over Fien's face as she listens. An angry mob of peasants demands the great saint's head for the losing war. Horrified, Fienne watches as blood splatters across the vision of the approaching crowd. The fury of the common people reaches a boiling point outside the temple. The mob screams for Fienne to take responsibility and be offered as a sacrifice. Fien is paralyzed by the sudden and violent turn of the public's opinion. She internally screams, realizing how fundamentally wrong this entire situation has become. Fien questions why she must suffer for a false prophecy she never delivered. Her attendants declare their mistrust of the High Priestess and support for Fienne. Fien visualizes her own head being offered to appease the angry citizens. If she is not sacrificed, the people's anger will surely destroy the temple. Fien closes her eyes, contemplating the grim necessity of her own death. She resolves to fulfill this final tragic duty to protect the kingdom's peace. Fien decides to use her final days to ensure the safety of the temple. She offers a sad, brave smile, accepting the burden for everyone's sake. Her attendant desperately begs her to run away and save herself. The girls weep, urging her to spend her remaining time in peaceful seclusion. Fien keeps her eyes shut, shielding herself from her friends' desperate pleas. She believes that someone must take responsibility to stop the cycles of violence. Her companions are overcome with grief and horror at her selfless decision.
Fienne reflects on the simple, happy times they shared during their daily lives.
She finds comfort in the knowledge that she was truly loved by them. The girls share a final, heartbreaking embrace amidst the blooming flowers.
In her heart, Fienne admits she is terrified of the executioner's blade.
She clenches her hands tightly, trying to find the courage to face death. The shadow of the guillotine looms over her as she prays for others. Fienne returns to her bed, surrounded by the women who truly cared for her.
The High Priestess offers a hollow prayer for Fiene's soul as she departs.
Fienne looks on with a hollow gaze, accepting that her end is near.
Fienne accepts a golden cup from her attendants with a soft thank you.
A soft glug-glug sounds as the blue-haired saint drinks deeply from the chalice.
The High Priestess instructs the attendants to escort the saint safely to the tower. The attendants exchange a meaningful look as they prepare to move Fienne. The short-haired attendant suggests changing the great saint into fresh clothes for the journey. Fingers deftly untie laces and remove the heavy white gown of the saintly office. Dressed in a simple blue gown, Fienne suddenly feels her vision begin to blur. Fienne's strength fails as she collapses, realizing she cannot keep her body awake. The attendants quickly work to remove her shoes while she remains in a stupor. The short-haired woman catches the unconscious saint before she can hit the floor.
Looking at her friend, an attendant wishes her happiness as Fienne questions Momo's attire.
The world becomes a distant, hazy memory as the saint's consciousness fades completely.
A single droplet of water falls from a green leaf, marking a quiet transition.
Fienne awakens in a small boat drifting on a lake under the silver moon. Gazing back at the distant temple, the bewildered saint wonders where she has been taken. Confusion grips Fienne as she recalls being changed out of her royal saintly robes. The blue-haired woman's eyes widen as she notices something else inside the small boat. A large tied cloth sack rests near her feet on the floor of the messel.
Reaching inside the bag, Fienne discovers a letter addressed to her by her name.
The letter reveals her attendants secretly spirited her away to save her from execution. Her loyal friends explain they provided a map to guide her toward a safe haven.
Beside the note, they included a beautiful pearl necklace as a final parting gift.
Tears stream down Fienne's face as she reads the heartfelt message from her sisters.
She worries about the terrible punishment her attendants might face for helping her escape.
Noticing the sack is full of coins, she feels guilty for their immense personal risk.
Fienne offers a silent, weeping thanks to her precious companions for their selfless love.
The dying saint resolves to survive and rely on their help until her very end. Walking into the dark woods, Fienne spots two hooded figures approaching through the trees. Fear flashes in her eyes as she stares at the mysterious pair holding a lantern. A sudden, sharp gasp escapes her as the strangers move closer into the dim light. Fienne's heart races, dreading that the royal palace's pursuers have already found her trail.
She despairs at the thought of being caught so soon after her friend's sacrifice.
One of the strangers reaches up and lowers their hood to reveal a face. The saint stares in shock as she begins to recognize the people before her. The man welcomes the great saint, explaining they have been waiting at the meeting spot. They mention waiting at the lake to ensure they did not miss her arrival. Fienne clutches the map tightly, tentatively asking for the identities of the two strangers. The man introduces himself as Dias and his wife as Sally, sent by Lady Lala. A memory flashes of a tearful couple holding a sick child Fienne once healed. Recognition floods her mind as she remembers the family from her past acts of mercy.
Dice urges her to hurry and offers to carry her to evade any incoming guards.
Fienne hesitates, unsure of whether to impose further on the kind couple's safety.
Sally offers a warm smile, begging the saint not to hold back and accept help.
A sharp, pained groan escapes Fienne as her terminal illness makes even breathing feel tight.
Realizing her own weakness, the saint gratefully decides to accept their generous offer of help. Placing her hand on Dice's shoulder, she quietly entrusts her life to their care.
Dice carries Fienne through the dark forest as Sally leads the way with her lantern. Fienne weakly asks about their son's health as they travel deeper into the woods. Sally happily reports that their son is healthy and energetic thanks to Fienne's miracle.
The blue-haired saint offers a faint, peaceful smile, glad her powers served a good purpose.
The group arrives at a secluded, small church deep within the quiet forest at night.
Dice explains the church belonged to his late grandfather and invites Fienne to stay. Fienne expresses her deep gratitude as Dice encourages her to rest and seek help. A quick clack sounds as the wooden door is shut, and they exchange goodnight wishes.
Fienne lies down in bed, finding a moment of rest after her long journey. The blue-haired saint closes her eyes, finally surrendering to a deep, heavy sleep.
Fienne stands in the rustic room, surrounded by falling blue petals and bright morning light.
The saint looks toward the window, her expression filled with a quiet, contemplative wonder.
Outside in the sunlight, Sally carries laundry while her young son runs around playfully.
Fienne offers a gentle smile while standing behind a vibrant cluster of yellow flowers.
Sally and Fienne exchange cheerful morning greetings as they meet outside the small church.
Fienne offers her assistance with the chores, but the kind woman initially tries to decline.
Fien insists on helping, explaining that she performed similar manual labor back at the temple. Sally relents with a bright smile, agreeing to let the saint help with the work. The two women work together in the sun, hanging fresh white laundry on a line. Inside the cottage, Fienne carefully arranges a fresh bouquet of yellow flowers in a vase. Fien cheers as the young boy stands on a stool to stir a large pot.
As night falls again, Fien climbs into her modest bed to end her busy day.
Fien reflects on how fulfilling her day was despite the exhaustion from her terminal illness.
The saint falls into a peaceful slumber while a single candle flickers on the table.
Fien's eyes remain shut as she drifts deeper into a world of strange, ethereal dreams. A rhythmic tapping sounds against the glass of the window in the dark of night. In a vision, a silver-haired figure commands a seed to sprout and find its place. Fien wakes up suddenly, looking troubled by the mysterious voice from her vivid nightmare.
The next morning, Sally notices Fien's weary appearance and asks if she slept well.
Fien admits she is troubled by recurring dreams featuring a strange, haunting voice.
Sally suggests using a special sleep aid potpourri inside her pillow to help her rest.
The saint's eyes light up with joy as she finds the suggestion absolutely lovely.
Sally promises to bring the potpourri later, while Fienne offers her a sincere thank you.
Fien suddenly reaches up and clutches the front of her blue dress in quiet alarm.
A look of realization crosses Fienne's face as she senses a change in her heart.
Fien looks down in shock, wondering what path she should take as her heart glows.
She recalls a vision of Arnold, whose chest was once marked by a dark curse. Fienne feels a wave of relief, realizing the active curse means the elf is alive. A rustling sound comes from the bushes outside the church under the silver moon.
A sharp sounds as Fienne gasps, her mouth opening in a sudden, intense pain. Fien sits up abruptly in bed, clutching her chest as a new agony strikes.
The blue-haired woman's eyes widened in terror as she stares into the dark room.
A sudden realization flashes through her mind that the mysterious seed has finally sprouted.
A small green leaf emerges from Fienne's glowing heart amidst a web of dark thorns.
A heavy boot steps over the windowsill as an intruder breaks into the saint's room.
Terrified, Fienne screams out a demand to know the identity of the mysterious intruder.
A hand reaches out with startling speed toward the saint as she recoils in back.
A muffled "umph" sounds as a hand covers Fienne's mouth, cutting off her desperate scream.
Fienne's eyes fill with tears and panic as she is pinned down by the stranger.
The silver-haired elf with pointed ears gazes down at her with a fierce, glowing intensity.
The elf keeps Fienne restrained as purple roses and white leaves swirl through the air.
Petals scatter across the room, marking the arrival of the powerful and mysterious silver-haired elf.
Fienne stares up at her captor in frozen horror, unable to break his firm, silent grip.
The saint trembles in her white nightgown as the elf looms over her in the dark.
A green sprout emerges from the dark, thorny vines within Fienne's heart. Fienne's chest glows brightly as the mysterious seed finally begins to sprout.
The silver-haired elf asks if she is the saint who broke the prince's curse.
The intruder's sharp golden eyes narrow as he stares intensely at the saint.
The elf stands by the window, his back turned to the terrified blue-haired woman.
He demands to know where a missing ring is, leaving Fienne completely bewildered.
Introducing himself as Victa, he reveals that Arnold stole a precious ring from him.
Recognition flashes as Fina learns the elf knows Arnold and mentions the stolen ring.
Fienne insists she has no knowledge of any ring while sitting up in bed.
Victa accuses her of lying for the prince, though she denies covering for him.
He pities her, noting how her efforts to save that man ruined her life.
The saint looks down in quiet despair as she sits alone on her bed.
Victa mocks her for fleeing her duties after the prince discarded her so cruelly.
The elf's expression remains cold as he continues to interrogate the weakened saint.
Fienne's hands tremble as she admits that everything she has done was a mistake.
She realizes that healing the prince only allowed him to return to the war.
The blue-haired woman hesitates, wondering if she should reveal the truth to her captor.
She worries that the truth might endanger Lala, her host family, and her friends.
A vision appears of the kind families and loyal attendants Fienne wishes to protect.
Victa declares that the temple and all its saints are completely rotten and corrupt.
Fienne remains silent, internally vowing not to let him insult her precious sisters.
She desperately claims that she was not the one who delivered the war-inciting oracle.
Fienne explains there are secret circumstances preventing her from revealing the full story.
Victa asks bluntly if she is denying her role in starting the conflict. Looking away, the saint confirms that she did not incite the devastating war. Victa laughs at the absurdity of her claim, running a hand through his hair.
His face twists with a vengeful fury as he glares at the helpless woman. He reveals a magic sealing nail driven deep into his arm as proof of betrayal. A blood-red memory shows a younger Victa running frantically while heavily wounded.
He recalls that terrible day, a memory stained with pain and violent betrayal. In the vision, Victa walks through a grand, sunlit palace hall during better times. He pauses in a lush garden, unaware of the tragedy that is about to strike.
A quick thud sounds as someone runs toward the elf at a frantic pace.
An attendant warns Lord Victor that their defensive barrier is on the verge of breaking.
Victor immediately rushes toward the danger, determined to protect his people from harm.
He freezes in shock as he witnesses the carnage and chaos unfolding before him.
A sharp slice sounds as blood splatters across Victor's hand during the struggle.
A quick thwip sounds as a glowing arrow pierces through his blue magical barrier.
A massive boom echoes as an explosion of power erupts, throwing the elf backward.
Victor lets out a pained groan as he collapses onto the grassy ground.
A sudden clatter sounds as a heavy blade is driven into the earth near him. An attacker declares he is taking the elf down with him despite the failure.
Arnold laughs maniacally while preparing to seal away Victor's accursed magical powers.
Arnold looms over his fallen victim, his face twisted with a mask of cruelty.
Victor's eyes reflect pure terror as he realizes the true extent of the trap.
Fiend gasps in horror, clutching her face as the tragic story is revealed.
Victa explains that Arnold cursed him and stole his identity-proving ring after the attack.
He expresses disbelief that someone so obsessed with beauty could be so horribly cruel.
Tears stream down Fiend's face as she listens to the elf's heartbreaking tale.
Victa asks why she is crying, noting that his ordeal is far from over.
A close-up reveals a jagged, rune-covered nail driven deep into the elf's arm.
Victa questions if the saint truly understands the weight of the prince's cruelty.
Crying, Fienne begs for a chance to atone as a saint who opposed the war.
The silver-haired elf stares at her silently, his golden eyes filled with complex emotion. Victa challenges her to prove her determination by pulling the magic sealing nail out. Fienne hesitates, explaining her terminal health and weak holy powers might cause him pain.
Victa looks up with a resigned, calm expression, waiting for her to act.
The saint bows her head, preparing herself for the difficult and painful task ahead.
Fienne places her hands over the wound, her palm beginning to emit a bright, divine glow.
A sharp, pained cry sounds as the golden light surges and the elf winces.
Light erupts as the saint exerts her holy power to extract the dark, cursed object.
Fienne focuses with all her remaining strength as blue petals swirl around the intense light.
A final, agonizing gasp sounds as Fienne successfully pulls the long, jagged nail free.
Exhausted, Fienne pants heavily, her eyes wide as she stares at the extracted nail.
A sudden, sharp gasp sounds as Fienne clutches her chest in intense, renewed agony.
Fienne winces in pain, realizing the toll this effort has taken on her failing heart.
Her hands tremble violently while she tries to regain her composure in the blinding light.
Fienne refuses to give up, determined to see this through despite her terminal condition. A final burst of pure white light marks the completion of the magic's release.
The blood-stained nail floats within an intricate golden magic circle before falling away.
Fienne's vision blurs as she begins to lose consciousness from the extreme physical strain.
The dark nail lies discarded on the floor next to a fresh spray of blood.
Rustling sounds come from the bright green woods as a new day begins outside.
Fienne looks out the open window, the morning sunlight highlighting her long blue hair.
She sits up in bed, surprised to find she feels much better than before.
Fienne wonders if Victa healed her heart in return for removing the sealing nail.
Sunlight pours into the quiet, rustic bedroom through the wide-open wooden window frame.
Narrator notes that the elf began visiting the church every night at 1 o'clock.
Victa stands in the room, explaining the immense strength needed to remove such a nail.
The silver-haired elf offers her a cup filled with a vibrant, glowing purple liquid.
Fienne thanks him while nervously commenting on the medicine's intense and intimidating color.
She decides to trust him and drink the medicine since he brought it specially. A quick gulp sounds as the blue-haired woman swallows the mysterious purple brew.
Fienne winces and gasps, finding the taste of the medicine incredibly bitter and unpleasant.
She lowers the cup with a pained expression, struggling with the lingering foul taste.
Standing in the sun, Fienne looks remarkably healthy and vibrant compared to her previous state.
Fienne sits on her bed and converses with Victa in the soft morning light.
Realizing his hidden kindness, Fienne asks the mysterious silver-haired elf for his name.
He introduces himself as Victa, insisting his actions are purely for his own benefit.
A rustling sound accompanies Victa's departure through the window as he promises to return.
Numbered pages float away as time passes, marked by sparkling blue trails of magic. Victa dutifully returns every night to provide the life-saving medicine to the recovering saint.
Fienne appears happy and full of life, her smile brightening the entire room.
Victa asks how a weakened saint like her managed to escape her high-security imprisonment.
The elf sits casually on the bed, awaiting her explanation with a curious look.
A memory shows a loyal attendant carrying the unconscious Fienne to a secret exit.
Fienne describes how she was placed in a small boat and sent downriver.
Victa acknowledges that her escape method was quite clever and well-planned given the circumstances. A dark vision depicts the tall, lonely palace tower where Fienne was once confined. A silhouette of a guillotine stands under a crimson moon, recalling her near execution.
Fienne explains that she was framed and lacks the power to receive divine oracles.
The blue-haired saint sadly emphasizes that her sisters never desired the devastating conflict.
A quick tap sounds as the elf admits he suspected she was telling the truth.
Fienne gazes upward in surprise as Victa acknowledges her lack of involvement in the war.
Narrator notes that only the High Priestess is capable of hearing the actual divine voice.
A vision shows the High Priestess blessing Prince Arnold as he kneels before her.
Victa looks down with a skeptical expression, reflecting on the temple's questionable and corrupt politics.
The blue-haired woman lets out a confused gasp as she listens to his claims.
Running a hand through his hair, Victa notes that her innocence is quite obvious.
The elf's expression remains weary while he continues to explain the reality of the situation. Looking out at the night sky, Victa asks if she feels any personal anger.
The silver-haired elf tells Fienne to consider the implications of her cruel treatment.
A grim vision shows angry citizens burning portraits of the saint in a large bonfire.
The crowd shout as they brand the innocent woman a wicked and deceitful villain.
Victa observes her reaction as he reveals the public's deep-seated hatred toward her.
Fienne focuses on a plate of sliced fruit, caring only for her sister's continued safety.
Looking distressed, the saint asks if he has heard rumors of her companion's suffering.
Victa reassures the worried woman that the other saints are currently living peacefully.
Fienne smiles with immense relief, gazing out the open window into the quiet night.
The elf questions what she would have done if her sisters had been punished.
Fienne looks determined, stating she would have sacrificed her own life to save them.
A sharp gasp sounds as Victa's golden eyes widen in shock at her selfless resolve.
Fienne clenches her hands, clarifying that she does not value her life lightly.
Looking down sadly, the saint reveals she only has 1 year left to live. The blue-haired woman sits in somber silence, processing the heavy weight of her fate.
Victa shouts in disbelief, horrified to learn about her terminal and failing health condition.
Fienne looks back at the elf with a gentle and heartbreakingly sad smile.
A dark vision warns that removing the cursed nail will result in her immediate death.
A horrific scene depicts Fienne lying lifeless on the floor in a pool of blood.
Victa frantically insists that her weakened body cannot handle the strain of the magic.
Fienne's resolve remains unshaken as she begs for the chance to remove the object.
Bathed in a divine light, the saint declares this difficult path as her chosen resolve.
The grim warning echoes again, showing the thorny vines of her terminal and painful curse.
Fienne envisions her own death once more, bleeding out upon the cold bedroom floor.
Victa continues to protest, desperate to stop her from throwing her short life away. Fienne persists in her request, her voice steady despite the elf's intense and vocal concern.
Surrounded by white flowers, Fienne stares ahead with a look of pure, unyielding determination. Glowing particles swirl around the saint as she prepares for the final agonizing effort.
Victa's face remains close, his expression a mixture of confusion and growing respect.
Fienne reacts with a surprised look as Victa moves much closer toward her. He notes things would be different if she were engaged to him instead of Arnold.
Fienne admits she never liked Arnold and had personal reasons for her previous actions.
Victa narrows his golden eyes, curious to know exactly what those hidden reasons are.
Fienne declares her desire to prove the saints were never involved in starting the war. She asks if he will clear the saints' names in Lelia when he eventually returns.
Victa smiles softly and agrees to help her fulfill her final, heartfelt wish.
The elf notes that he can personally relate to her feelings of duty and sacrifice.
Fienne smiles brightly, her face framed by beautiful blooming roses and radiant soft light. Victa insists she must drink the purple medicine for the sake of her health.
Fienne dutifully swallows the bitter brew while the elf watches over her in the room. Fienne winces at the bitter taste after drinking the medicine.
Victa sighs with an exasperated expression as he watches the saint.
The silver-haired elf tells Fienne to open her mouth for a treat. A close-up shows the small round treat entering the woman's mouth. Fienne's eyes widen as she discovers the pleasant and sweet flavor.
Victa explains that elven children are given treats after taking their medicine.
Fienne is shocked to realize the elf is treating her like a child. Amidst blooming roses, Victa offers to bring more treats with the medicine.
Fienne questions Victa about his true age after being called a tout.
A chibi-style scene depicts the two characters reacting with comical shock and bewilderment.
Fienne exclaims that the elf only looks a few years older than her. Victa laughs, finding her exaggerated reactions quite entertaining to watch.
The atmosphere turns serious as Victa gains a somber and focused look. A close-up highlights the elf's lips as he prepares to speak.
Victa asks Fienne to listen carefully as he reveals a hidden truth. He mentions a precious ring that Prince Arnold stole from him.
An intricate silver ring floats against a bright and flowery background. Victa explains the ring is reserved for those recognized by his clan.
He reveals the artifact allows someone to easily enter the Elven lands.
Victa vows to retrieve the ring before Arnold discovers its true power.
Fien worries that Arnold will capture the elves if he learns the secret. The blue-haired woman realizes Victa shared this information because he trusts her.
Fien decides to share everything she knows to assist the silver-haired elf.
Surrounded by blue flowers, Fien pleads with Victa to recover the ring.
Fien describes a hidden passage within the palace to help his mission.
A close-up shows her finger indicating the specific location on the parchment.
Victa expresses his gratitude while Fien shares in his relief.
The elf's expression becomes grim as he mentions a final remaining obstacle.
Victor reveals a nail is driven into his knee, shocking the saint.
The elf pulls up his trouser leg to show the jagged metal object.
A close-up reveals the dark, cursed nail embedded deep in his flesh.
Fien is horrified, having thought the heart nails were the last ones.
Victa looks at her with a calm intensity, asking if she can remove it.
Fien reflects on the cruelty used to suppress the elf's formidable power.
The two sit together on the bed in the quiet, dimly lit room.
Fien places her hands on his knee, declaring she will begin the healing. A bright divine light surges as the saint starts the painful extraction. Despite the medicine's help, Fien begins to feel her strength rapidly fading.
Fienna reaches her physical limit while struggling to complete the difficult magical task.
The jagged nail is slowly forced out of the elf's wounded knee. Sparking with light, the cursed object finally flies free from the body. The bloodied nail clatters onto the floor as Fien collapses from exhaustion. Victa shouts Fien's name and reaches out to catch her falling body. The elf catches the unconscious woman, begging her to stay with him. Close-up shows Fien's hand resting weakly on the elf's broad shoulder. Fien weakly assures the worried elf that she is still all right.
The woman is carefully supported as she begins to regain her senses.
Looking up from her bed, Fien thanks Victa for his great help.
Victa smiles from the window, thanking the saint before he departs. Fien sits alone, finding happiness in her choice to use her healing power.
Narrative text explains how the feeling of being treated with kindness brings happiness.
A small pouch containing medicine sits on the wooden ledge beside blooming white roses.
Victa departs for the palace after providing several days' worth of essential medicine.
Fien gazes upward with deep concern, her hands clasped in a silent prayer.
Watching leaves fall from her window, the saint prays for the elf's safety.
The blue-haired woman realizes that Victa has likely reached the palace by now.
Continuing her plea, Fien asks for the silver-haired man's safe return and protection. The scene shifts as a single green leaf drifts toward the sunlit thwar.
A close-up shows the saint's white gown resting against the wooden windowsill.
Fien is greeted by a blonde woman entering her quiet, wood-paneled bedroom.
The blue-haired woman watches the newcomer with a curious and slightly distant look. A moment of silence follows as the woman sets a tray down.
Sally notices the dark circles under Fien's eyes and asks about her insomnia.
Fien smiles weakly and decides to keep her nightly elven visitor a secret.
Sally mentions her husband observed an improvement in the saint's health recently.
The blue-haired woman listens intently while her expression shifts to one of anxiety.
A grim vision shows the terminal curse returning, leaving the woman bleeding and suffering.
Fien thanks the woman while trying to dismiss her worries about the medical attacks.
Her hand clenches the white nightgown in a moment of silent internal distress.
Fien admits she is preoccupied, her mind drifting to the silver-haired elf's mission.
A memory shows Victa at her window with the items he intends to retrieve.
Looking at Sally, Fien asks if she ever stays awake thinking of someone.
Sally wonders if the person the saint is thinking of is Lord Arnold.
Fien reacts with a panicked denial, insisting Arnold is not on her mind.
Sally reminds her of their past engagement while Fien dismisses any thought of him.
The blonde woman looks back with a gentle and knowing smile.
Sally asks if there is someone else that Fien has truly come to care for.
Blushing amidst a pink aura, the saint looks surprised by the sudden question.
Sally teases Fien about her age while the saint hides under the covers.
With a chibi-style wink, Sally leaves the room to finish her cleaning duties. Narration notes that Fien actually knows very little about the mysterious elf's life.
A close-up focuses on Fien's blue eye as she ponders her feelings.
Fien envisions Victa walking alone through a dark and mysterious moonlit forest. Shadows stretch across the ground as the silver-haired man moves through the trees. A vision of a happy couple causes Fien to reflect on her own desires.
Fien worries that her hope for his return is merely a selfish desire.
The saint considers if she is simply getting full of herself and overreacting.
Fien acknowledges that they were simply using each other for their own goals.
Despite their arrangement, the woman admits her strange desire to see him again. Hugging her pillow, the saint wonders if she is allowed to pray for him. Fien sits alone on the bed reading a book by candlelight.
A close-up shows the saint's focused and somewhat melancholy profile.
A sudden, loud clatter sounds at the window, startling the blue-haired woman.
Fien looks toward the window in alarm, questioning the identity of the intruder.
Dust and light swirl in the air as the window is abruptly opened.
Fien gasps with wide eyes as she realizes the person outside is wounded.
Fien shouts the elf's name as he appears injured and bleeding at the window.
A thud sounds as the wounded elf struggles to maintain his balance.
Fiend rushes forward and catches Victa as he collapses, asking what happened. The silver-haired elf falls face down on the bed, unconscious and bleeding heavily.
Breathing heavily, the wounded elf gasps for a moment of quiet rest.
Blood drips from the man's leg as he looks at his gruesome injury.
A sudden, sharp tick sounds as he begins removing an embedded projectile.
Victa winces in pain, his golden eyes narrowed with exhaustion and grit.
Fiend protests his refusal and insists she must provide urgent medical treatment.
The elf shouts a firm rejection, forbidding her from using her healing power. Despite the saint's worry, Victa declares he will extract the weapons himself. A pained escapes his lips as he begins the bloody extraction.
A heavy clatter rings out as 2 blood-stained arrows fall to the floor.
Fiend watches in horrified silence, her hands trembling as she gazes at him.
Bandages, medicine, and surgical tools sit ready on the wooden bedside table.
While wrapping his wounds, Fienne asks if he successfully reached the palace treasury.
Victa lets out a soft ha as he looks at her with relief.
A radiant light surrounds the silver ring he recovered for his people.
Fiend's eyes light up with joy as she celebrates the ring's recovery.
The elf confirms his success and tells her to finish tending his wounds.
The blue-haired woman stares back at him with a confused and curious expression.
Victa claims his elven nature will heal him, but Fienne forbids such recklessness.
The silver-haired man looks at her with a somber and deeply focused intensity.
Narration explains the saint's holy power actually involves sacrificing pieces of their life.
Fienne is visibly shaken, realizing the terrible price she pays for her magic.
The scene shifts as the focus moves toward the next stage of his mission.
Recalling the legend, she considers the heavy burden shared by all the saints.
The weight of the truth leaves Fienna breathless and filled with mounting dread.
Narration describes the night Victa set off toward the royal palace of Rod.
Faint glowing particles drift through the dark evening air as time passes by.
A soft step sounds as Victa scouts the heavily guarded palace entrance.
Overhearing guards, he learns the saint has been condemned to a cruel fate.
Victa ponders the news of her condemnation with a dark and thoughtful look.
Cloaked in shadows, the elf moves swiftly through the palace's opulent halls.
Standing before the massive treasury doors, the elf prepares for the final task.
He remembers Fienne's instructions and prepares to chant the secret opening spell.
Soft light glows as Victa whispers the ancient incantation to unlock the door.
A low creak echoes through the hall as the heavy treasury door opens. Victa is stunned by the grotesque collection of stolen curiosities within the room.
The elf expresses his utter disgust at the prince's twisted and selfish tastes.
He scans the room, searching for the one item that truly matters.
A close-up highlights the elf's sharp gaze as he spots a specific box.
The ornate lid opens to reveal the shining, long-lost ring of his clan.
Victa smiles with triumph, finally reclaiming the artifact stolen by the royal family.
He carefully slides the silver ring onto his finger, reclaiming his heritage.
A warm thought of gratitude for the saint's help fills his mind.
Surrounded by colorful flowers, Victa feels a rare moment of peace and victory.
Fienne explains that Arnold is obsessed with his trophies and will notice a theft.
Following her advice, the elf leaves a decoy ring inside the red-lined box.
A quick dash sounds as Victor retreats from the treasury with his prize.
A light tap echoes as the elf skillfully climbs over the high railing.
The full moon shines brightly over the silent and sleeping capital city. Victa leaps into the night air, escaping toward the safety of the woods.
A heavy thud sounds as the elf lands in the grass, his energy spent.
Cloaked in his hood, Victa observes the palace grounds from the dense forest.
Peering through a large palace window, the elf watches a cold audience taking place.
A distraught mother begs the blonde saint to relieve her daughter's agonizing chest pain.
Jessica heartlessly refuses, stating she only heals Lord Arnold before calling for another saint named Lila.
The cold-hearted woman dismissively orders the braided saint Lila to perform the healing in her stead.
Relief washes over the mother as she is told her child will finally receive aid.
With a sharp tongue, Jessica tells the commoners they are free to leave if they are unsatisfied. The mother continues her desperate plea while the two saints stand in the vast hall. A muffled grunt of pain sounds as the healing process begins to take a toll. Glowing magical particles swirl around the saint's hands as she exerts her holy power.
A series of wet coughs echo as Layla collapses, staining the floor with blood.
A sharp tisk sounds as Jessica watches the suffering saint with cold, unfeeling eyes.
Standing amidst dark roses, Jessica abruptly ends the session and orders everyone to leave.
Despite the mother's protests about her child's condition, the blonde woman insists they depart immediately.
The room falls quiet as the mother and her sick child are forced out.
A frustrated ugh escapes Jessica as she wonders why she must listen to commoners complain.
Seething with rage, she mocks the other saint's inability to use her powers correctly.
Her internal monologue concludes with a harsh and silent condemnation of the collapsed healer's worth.
The cold atmosphere intensifies as Jessica looms over the broken saint on the floor.
As night falls, Victor continues his stealthy surveillance from outside the palace window.
Observing the scene, Victor realizes Jessica is the cruel antithesis of the kind-hearted Fienne. A subtle tick sounds as Victor begins his covert movement through the palace.
His boots make a light top sounding as he maneuvers through the quiet interior.
He stops before a heavy, ornate wooden door marked with ancient golden symbols.
Entering the private chamber, Victor confirms he has found the High Priestess's inner sanctum.
The elf cautiously explores the dimly lit study, searching for any hidden secrets.
Victor decides to search the room thoroughly for information regarding the saint's powers.
He approaches a large wooden desk cluttered with mysterious artifacts and old documents. His attention is drawn to a stack of leather-bound volumes resting on the desk.
Opening one of the texts, Victor is startled by the dark secrets written within.
The text describes a cruel ritual where children with holy power are gathered at age 10.
The narrative continues, detailing the grim fate of those chosen to become the kingdom's saints. A clink sounds as the revelation explains that powerful magic drastically shortens a saint's life.
Horrified, Victor realizes that every act of healing brings Fienne closer to her death.
Victor explains the terrifying truth to Fienne, confirming her life is the price of magic.
Fienne is shaken, imagining the High Priestess's role in this dark, life-draining cycle.
Fienne desperately begs the elf to wait as the weight of the truth sinks in. Realization strikes as Fienne understands she has been unknowingly sacrificing her life for Arnold.
With a somber expression, Victor confirms her suspicions regarding her past sacrifices for the prince.
Victor notes that his investigation into the Kingdom of Rod has unearthed further troubling mysteries.
The elf questions the church's policy of keeping healers confined instead of sending them afield.
Fienne recounts the official excuse given for their isolation, though it now feels like imprisonment.
She ponders the strange anomaly of why only their kingdom possesses individuals with healing abilities.
A sudden proposal is made as Victor invites the blue-haired woman to the Elven lands. He suggests that the Elven lands may hold the key to understanding her lethal magic.
The silver-haired man offers her a chance at salvation away from the palace's dark secrets.
Fienne is visibly stunned by the invitation to journey into the legendary Elven realm.
Fienne expresses her heartfelt gratitude to the couple who sheltered her before she departs.
The couple wishes her well, noting how fortunate she is to have found a protector.
In a comedic moment, a blushing Fienne frantically denies any romantic connection to the elf.
Fienne closes her eyes, reflecting on her departure from the kind couple.
With a bright smile and clasped hands, the blue-haired woman offers her thanks.
Bright orange roses bloom, symbolizing the warm hospitality she received.
The couple promises to wait for Fienne, hoping to reunite one day. The silver-haired elf gently urges Fienne to finish her goodbyes.
Victor signals it's time to leave, and Fienne tentatively agrees to follow.
The blonde woman reaches out to Fienne as she prepares to depart. The blonde woman whispers a teasing comment about Fienne's longing for her companion.
Fienne's eyes widen in shock as she blushes at the sudden suggestion.
The two travelers walk into the woods as the couple waves farewell. Amidst the lush forest, Victor and Fienne begin their journey toward the coast.
The silver-haired man glances back, curious if Fienne noticed the gift he left.
Victor reflects on Fienne's kindness after leaving pearl earrings for their hosts.
Arriving at a cliffside, Victor announces they are nearing the coastal town. A delicate hand holds a magical silver necklace with a glowing purple jewel.
Surrounded by roses, Victor instructs Fienne to put on the enchanted accessory.
The necklace emits a radiant light as the blue-haired woman prepares to transform.
Magic swirls as Fienne takes on a new form with brown hair. Victor proposes they pose as a married couple to avoid palace guards.
Now disguised, the brown-haired woman reacts with flustered shock to the suggestion.
Fienne nervously inquires if the elf already has a family of his own.
A tense moment passes as Victor confirms he does have a family.
He clarifies that he meant parents and a sister, confirming he is single.
Relief washes over Fienne's face as she absorbs his surprising answer.
A subtle slip sounds as Victor adjusts his own magical appearance.
Glowing particles transform the elf into a brown-haired human man. Fienne is overjoyed by the success of their new, inconspicuous appearances. The two companions join hands, solidifying their roles for the disguise. Hand in hand, the couple enters the town market to gather supplies. Fienne tries to convince herself there was no deeper meaning in her question. She insists her curiosity about his marital status was purely professional. A series of quick exchanges sound as the pair buys food from stalls.
They continue through the market, blending in perfectly with the local crowd.
Fienne explores a shop filled with colorful potions and glass bottles. The bustling town market is filled with merchants and travelers under the sun. The brown-haired man asks if they have finished their necessary shopping.
Fienne pauses, looking up at her protector in his human guise.
Victa places a steady hand on her shoulder as she thanks him.
Fienna realizes that despite his blunt words, the man is truly kind.
The man gazes forward, focused on their safety as they leave the market.
At dusk, Victa suggests they rest at an inn before boarding a ship.
The pair approaches a stone building as night falls over the sound. A soft click sounds as Victa removes the magical necklace after entering.
The illusion fades, revealing the elf's silver hair and pointed ears. Fienne hesitates, considering her own appearance while looking into a mirror. Victa tells her to remove the disguise, but she refuses.
The brown-haired woman insists on remaining transformed, confusing the elf.
Blushing with shame, Fienne admits she finds her true form embarrassing.
She explains she feels unsightly because of the physical toll of her magic.
A quiet thud sounds as Victa stops and absorbs her painful confession.
He explains that her fatigue stems from using her power for too long.
The silver-haired man pulls a metallic container of salve from the supply bag.
The brown-haired woman asks about the purpose of the medicine.
The elf looks down with a calm and steady expression.
He gently applies the healing ointment to the woman's head.
He notes her hidden worries and explains the ointment restores more than health.
He touches her cheek, adding that the cream benefits her skin and hair.
Fienne becomes flustered, wondering how to handle his unexpected tenderness.
She finds the close proximity and physical touch incredibly embarrassing.
Closing her eyes, she feels her heart pounding intensely from his touch.
The silver-haired elf offers a soft smile while touching his gold ring.
A light pat sounds as he places a reassuring hand on her head.
They share a quiet and peaceful moment together in their room.
The man feeds her a small treat while continuing his gentle care.
Lying awake at night, the blue-haired woman struggles with her restless thoughts.
She feels grateful for the hard work of her sisters at the temple. She resolves to do whatever she can despite her limited time left. Surrounded by dark roses, she reaffirms her commitment to help others. Through a window, the disguised pair is seen sharing a sunlit meal.
She expresses surprise that elves eat meat, mentioning her belief they were vegetarians.
He dismisses that as a stereotype and asks about her own food restrictions. The brown-haired woman smiles and says she has no particular dietary rules.
He tells her she isn't eating enough, though she finds the portion large. The man insists she eat more, noting that her appetite is too small.
She looks down at the table, her mood becoming more solemn.
He offers to finish whatever she cannot manage to eat himself. She thinks to herself about how truly kind the man is. They overhear gossip about Leah demanding the great saint's head. Nearby commoners comment on what a terrible villainess the saint is. She sadly agrees that the people are the ones who ultimately suffer. She imagines an angry mob denouncing the saint for starting a war. In her mind, a crowd aggressively demands the great saint's head. A light scrape sounds as she reflects on the high priestess's authority. He pats her head, telling her to eat and ignore the rumors. She asks if he will still take her to his country. The brown-haired man confirms that taking her remains the plan. Moved by his words, the woman looks at him with surprise. Two hands join together over a bouquet of white roses. The couple walks together toward a large wooden sailing ship at the dock. The woman begins climbing the gangplank to board the vessel.
A sudden slip sounds as she loses her footing on the wood.
He catches her before she falls, eliciting a startled cry. She apologizes for the stumble as he asks if she is okay. He tells her to stay close to maintain their married disguise. She leans against him as they walk, embracing their roles. The ship sails away across the vast and sparkling blue ocean.
She asks if they are heading to Lilia, but he declines.
He explains that the current situation is too tense due to failed negotiations.
She internally admits her deep ignorance regarding the world's workings. She laments that while saints sacrifice their lives, people only thank God. Fienne reflects on her dwindling faith and the doubts clouding her thoughts. She envisions an angry mob armed with pitchforks, their eyes burning with hatred. She laments that the prince and church leadership shifted all blame onto her. Bloody hands gripping weapons emphasize the violence she fears from the public. The blue-haired woman walks alone down a long, dark path toward an uncertain future. Returning to reality, the disguised pair shares a quiet look during their journey. The silver-haired man notes that her skin is recovering its health under his care. Fienne remains silent, her cheeks flushing as she processes the man's attention.
Victor reaches out to apply the healing salve to the woman's neck.
She tries to stay calm, but her heart races uncontrollably at his gentle touch. He announces he is finished as Fienne catches her breath from the intense proximity. The elf abruptly questions the nature of her past relationship with Prince Arnold. Leaning in close, he asks if she and the prince ever shared a kiss. Fienne frantically shouts a denial, explaining their interactions were strictly formal and public.
In a small chibi scene, Victa accepts her answer while remembering her stiff engagement.
A sudden grip on her wrist signals the elf's shift to a more serious tone. Victa pulls the blue-haired woman into a sudden protective embrace from behind. A soft acknowledgement marks a transition as the scene shifts to their shared room. Lying in bed, the man comments on Fienne's lack of experience in personal matters.
She asks if elves sleep this way, and he assumes human customs are similar.
He tells her to sleep, promising her racing heart will calm down eventually.
Gazing at her, he notes she fluctuates between acting like an adult and a child.
Fiend realizes his actions are motivated by concern and imagines a future together. She envisions a world where they could live as a happy, peaceful family. Her daydream of a life with Victa and a child fades back into the present.
The blue-haired woman lies awake, her mind filled with newfound feelings for her protector.
She whispers the elf's name softly into the quiet of the room.
Fienna gathers her courage and asks the silver-haired man if he has ever kissed anyone.
The elf turns toward her with a playful smile, asking if she wants a kiss.
A quick movement sounds as she reacts to his bold and unexpected question. A soft rustle is heard as she clutches her blanket tightly in nervousness.
Victa leans down and presses a tender, lingering kiss to her forehead.
He pulls back slightly, his expression softening as he looks at her.
Fiend's eyes widen in utter shock at the man's sudden display of affection.
A quick whoosh sounds as the embarrassed woman dives headfirst under her covers.
The man tells her he will sleep nearby and bids her a good night.
Fienna remains awake, unable to find peace after the intimate moment they shared.
She wonders why she can't sleep, feeling he only views her as a child.
Her eyes remain open, reflecting her internal struggle and growing attachment. A sudden gasp sounds as she sits up, noticing something is wrong with Victa.
The elf groans in his sleep as a pained nah escapes his lips during a nightmare. She realizes with growing alarm that the man is in significant physical pain. Worry etches across her face as she watches him struggle through his rest.
The silver-haired man winces and sweats, his body tense from the unseen agony.
Fienne resolves to help him, believing she can alleviate his suffering by magic. She reaches her hand toward the invisible barrier surrounding the sleeping Hulf.
A sharp snap sounds as Victa suddenly grabs her arm with a firm grip.
Startled by the sudden contact, Fienne stares at him with wide-eyed surprise.
The man sits up immediately, demanding to know what she is doing.
A tense silence falls as his sharp, golden eye fixes on her intently.
The blue-haired woman worries she angered the man but notes her concern.
The silver-haired man assures her that she should not worry about him.
He notes her empathy for others as she mentions his obvious physical pain.
The man explains he will have the nails removed in the elven land. He tells her to stop worrying and encourages her to go to sleep.
The woman remains silent, clutching her blanket with a look of deep uncertainty.
The silver-haired man gazes at her with a calm and steady expression.
The scene shifts as time passes quietly into the depths of the night.
A quiet moment focuses on the wooden frame of their shared bed.
He asks how she feels, and she admits she can sleep well now.
Lying in bed, the blue-haired woman feels a sense of relief and peace.
A large sailing ship cuts through the waves across the vast blue ocean.
A soft wake-up call sounds as the woman opens her bright blue eyes.
He notes she slept soundly and tells her to get ready to leave.
The disguised pair looks ahead as the man announces they have finally arrived.
The ship nears the coast of a town identified as the Port of Quant.
A bustle of activity fills the streets of the town under a clear sky.
Walking through the market, the brown-haired pair remains close to avoid any suspicion.
The man suggests they board a waiting red carriage and she quickly agrees.
A light rattle sounds as the carriage travels swiftly down the scenic road.
Inside, the man asks why she is brooding by herself during their journey.
She admits that everything seems to be going a little bit too smoothly.
Fienne worries that Prince Arnold will not give up his pursuit so easily. She explains to her companion that the prince was terribly fixated on Elf.
The man acknowledges her concern but suggests they discuss the matter later.
Looking out the window, the brown-haired woman remains lost in her troubled thoughts.
Dust kicks up as the red carriage continues its journey toward its destination.
The carriage arrives at the entrance of a grand and beautiful white mansion.
A soft shimmer sounds as their human disguises begin to fade away indoors.
A gray-haired man identified as Count Encult rushes to welcome Duke Dom.
Victa introduces Encult as a friend who mentions the famous great saint.
Encult explains that the great saint of Rod was condemned and executed.
Victor remarks on the helplessness of the dead as the woman looks on.
A faint click sounds as he removes the necklace, fully breaking her disguise.
Fienne's blue hair is revealed as she stands surrounded by vibrant flowers.
The group walks through the mansion as Encult leads them to their quarters.
The silver-haired man states firmly that Fienne was falsely accused of her crimes.
He explains that only the High Priestess is capable of receiving divine oracles. He envisions the High Priestess Athena flying into a rage amid skeletal remains.
A metallic scrape sounds as Encult opens the door to their private rooms.
The older man shows them into a luxurious and spacious blue-themed bedroom.
Fienne thanks him as he encourages them both to get some needed rest.
Time passes as they share meals and rest within the safety of the mansion.
A white feather drifts slowly as the blue-haired woman wakes from her slumber.
Victa asks if she is feeling better while he sits nearby reading a book. She confirms she is all right and asks if he was able to rest himself.
The silver-haired man offers a soft smile and assures her that he is fine.
A clear ring sounds as a hand shakes a small silver bell. He tells her to get dressed properly as Enkalt arranges their next steps.
The woman is left confused, wondering why she needs to dress so formally.
Maids carefully measure and sew the blue-haired woman's new dress.
A maid attends to the blue-haired woman, meticulously styling her long hair.
The woman applies makeup with a soft brush as she finishes getting ready.
Standing elegantly in her new gown, the woman prepares for an important meeting.
The silver-haired man takes her hand, announcing he wants her to meet someone. The man leads the blue-haired woman through the mansion's sunlit halls. They stop at a grand entrance as the man introduces his sister, Athena.
Athena, a silver-haired elf in a teal dress, stands with a stoic expression.
A soft aura surrounds the beautiful elf as the blue-haired woman notes her name.
Fienna identifies herself as the former great saint of Rod, admiring Athena's beauty internally.
Athena's expression hardens as she questions why the woman is present.
A sharp ring sounds as Athena fixes a cold, piercing gaze on the saint.
A startled gasp escapes the woman as the elf raises her hand aggressively.
The elf's eyes flash with golden intensity as she prepares to strike the woman.
A sudden crack sounds as the silver-haired man intercepts the elf's arm.
The man positions himself between the two women, protecting his companion.
Athena demands to know why he is with the saint, admitting she was worried.
Victa apologizes for the silence, explaining that his magic had been sealed.
The silver-haired man begins to unbutton his shirt to provide proof of his ordeal.
Athena's eyes widen in sheer horror at what she is about to witness.
The man exposes his chest, revealing the painful metal nails driven into his skin.
Stunned, Athena gasps as she asks for an explanation regarding his condition.
Victa urges her to calm down, stating firmly that Fienne is not responsible.
Athena asks if the Prince of Rod was the one who caused his injuries.
She points toward the blue-haired woman, identifying her as the prince's fiancée.
Victa explains that Fienne was exploited by the High Priestess to heal the prince's wounds. He highlights the prince and priestess's cruelty, explaining Fienne was unfairly blamed for everything.
Victa reveals that Fienne's powers are consuming her life, leaving her only 1 year.
A sharp intake of breath marks Athena's shock at the woman's tragic fate.
Athena asks if the great saint is actually innocent, and Victa confirms it. The silver-haired elf looks away as she processes the truth behind the accusations. Athena bows and apologizes for her behavior, which Fienne graciously accepts.
The two women share a quiet look as they reconcile their initial misunderstanding.
Victa warns Athena not to strain Fienne, prompting a tease about his overprotective nature.
Fienne laments being treated like a child again following the man's parental comment.
Athena tells the woman to sit and requests to examine her arm.
The blue-haired woman offers her hand as the elf begins her examination.
Athena grips the woman's arm firmly, noting her fragile fate.
The elf expresses disbelief at how thin and fragile the woman's arm feels.
Fienne admits that her physical frailty is the cost of using her sacred magic. Athena remains silent as she gazes at the woman with newfound sympathy.
Time passes as the group gathers around a sofa in the sunlit room.
The blue-haired woman closes her eyes, succumbing to the exhaustion of the day.
Holding a vial of red liquid, Athena announces she has finished her treatment.
Victa scolds his sister for pushing the saint, who insists she is fine.
A sudden stumble causes the silver-haired man to catch the collapsing woman.
The blue-haired woman apologizes weakly as her strength completely fails her.
A soft rustle sounds as the man grips the woman's dress, holding her tight.
Surrounded by vibrant roses, the man carries the unconscious woman in his arms.
Victa carries Fienna away, instructing his friends to watch over her while she rests.
A soft ah sounds as Fienne realizes how delicious the biscuits are.
The silver-haired man gazes at her with a gentle and warm smile.
Her heart flutters with a sudden doki as she continues her meal blushing. He tells her to eat and asks if she needs anything else.
The man explains he will step out for a bit, leaving her alone. Fienne reflects on the man's kindness while a floral background highlights her mood. The grand mansion stands tall under the glow of the full moon. The woman sits alone in the spacious room, quietly drinking her tea. He returns, suggesting she should have slept, but she admits she waited.
Fienne tentatively calls his name, and he asks what is on her mind.
She insists she can walk alone, while he encourages her to lean on him. A somber and thoughtful expression clouds the blue-haired woman's beautiful face. A sudden realization brings a quiet moment of focus to the woman.
Fienne asks the man if he would be willing to rub her back again. Fienne explains only her parents used her name, and he acknowledges their shared intimacy. Narrative text clarifies that all elves hold the prestigious rank of Duke.
The man offers a reassuring smile, confident they will all get along well.
The woman expresses her growing anticipation for their visit to the Elven land.
Vibrant flowers frame her inner desire to remain by his side forever.
Enkalt announces they have successfully arranged entry into the kingdom of Lilia.
He outlines the schedule for their upcoming audience with the king in 4 days. The gray-haired man requests that they avoid going outside for their own safety. Incult suggests they visit the garden roses if they find themselves feeling cored.
The woman reacts with embarrassed surprise at the mention of a potential date.
The silver-haired man accepts the suggestion while finishing his meal at the table.
The pair walks together through a garden filled with vibrant, blooming red roses.
Fienne closes her eyes, finding peace while surrounded by the fragrant flowers.
He offers to bring flowers to her room, but she politely declines.
She explains that the roses are most beautiful when blooming in their natural place.
Standing under glowing wisteria, she reflects on her past life following strict teachings.